The former president has been adamant that he will not sign the pledge to support Republicans' eventual nominee, which is one of the rules, one of the requirements to take the stage. And that's reportedly putting the RNC in a bind. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill, writing about this. So, Julia, let's kind of play out the scenarios here. We know the former president says he will not sign it. Now he's saying that there are 3 or 4 people he would absolutely not support. But RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel, she's maintained this is a rule that applies to everybody. So let's just say he shows up and he hasn't signed that requirement. What happens? Is he barred from taking the stage?
Yeah, well, that's the question, Adrienne. And a lot of Republicans I talked to who were essentially just speculating on this said they couldn't really see a scenario in which Donald Trump would be prevented from taking the stage. Look, he is the last major GOP president, a former president. He's the front runner by far in this party's nomination process. So it really puts the Republican Party's establishment in an awkward position because you have this split almost between them and former President Trump when it comes to the debate. Now, I will point out this isn't the first time Donald Trump has kept us guessing on whether he will sign a loyalty pledge or attend a debate. Back in August of 2015, he was one of the only candidate actually on stage who didn't raise his hand when asked if he would support the eventual Republican nominee. That following September, he signed a loyalty pledge. But by March, President Trump was saying that he would not abide by the loyalty pledge. And, most candidates or a lot of Republican candidates haven't necessarily done that in the past. Remember, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and former Ohio Governor John Kasich signed that pledge in 2015. But they didn't end up supporting Donald Trump in the general election.
How could his refusal to support the eventual nominee, if it's not him, affect his ability to show up on the primary ballot?
In terms of the primary ballot, I don't think it would impact it at all. And that's where you have questions about the point of this loyalty pledge. I talked to some former people who worked at the RNC in 2015 and 2016, and they had some issues with the loyalty pledge to begin with because they claimed that it was because of Donald Trump, that this is why they were having people sign this pledge, because he, as the front runner in 2015, didn't raise his hand on stage, so they wanted to do something to make everyone say they would support it. Now, people in favor of the loyalty pledge say that this is for the sake of party unity, to keep the Republican Party together going into a general election. But the fact of the matter is, you have this base, this very strong base of Republican primary voters who will support Trump no matter what. And that is being very clearly in the polls. And you have the establishment saying, look, you got to sign the pledge. We got to all get in the same boat.
But what are the chances the nominee is not him? I mean, he has over 50% approval by likely voters. Does this show him not signing? Does this show that he's concerned that his place as the front runner is compromised by perhaps multiple indictments that are currently in court?
That's a good question. I don't think Donald Trump seems to think that these indictments seem to be aiding him in a way politically, as ironic as that sounds, because it's galvanizing his base. It's getting him ahead or helping galvanize his base in the polls and getting, Republican primary voters very much behind him. I think, though, there is a lot of concern among other Republicans, whether they're consultants, strategists, maybe some lawmakers, that in the case that Donald Trump doesn't show up on the ballot for whatever reasons, if it's related to those legal reasons, they're going to have a turnout problem when it comes to, the primary or even the general election. So it goes to show that the Republican National Committee, in a way, needs, and the Republican establishment needs Donald Trump more than he needs them, because he's the one that's rallying up that very important base.
Yeah, and it's must-watch TV once again to have him on that stage. Julia Manchester, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.